Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Truth for Life. Today we're going to be looking at the topic of finding your true identity and value. I'm Dr. Mark Sandoval, and it's my pleasure to be on this journey with you to freedom and healing. Question: who are you? Who are you? I like asking that question. In fact, multiple times with multiple patients, I have asked that question, who are you? And sometimes it can be quite revealing, the answers that come. Usually, if I'm talking to a man, the response when I ask, who are you, is what I do. So the man will respond, well, I'm a mechanic, or I'm a carpenter, or I'm a tradesman, or I'm a whatever. And the secondary identity that a man will usually identify with is their career, right? That they're a provider, or what their hobbies might be. Right? These are common things that men identify when they identify their identity. Women, they tend to, at least in the Western culture, they tend to identify who they're related to. So they relate themselves as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, and so on. That's how they identify as. And then men, secondarily, will identify who they're related to. So I'm a father, I'm a husband, and so on. And women, secondarily, will identify as what they do, their career, they're a caretaker, or so on. And finally, men will usually end in, well, I don't know. If it's not career and it's not who they're related to, I don't know. And women, they might go on to their qualities. Well, I'm helpful, or I'm, this, that, or the other thing. And this has been my experience in asking the question to patients over the years and seeing what their responses are to these. Now, do your actions define who you are? In other words, is it what you do that makes what you are? Or is it that your identity determines what you do? Which way is it? In other words, are you a human doing, or are you a human being? Which do you see yourself to be? If your identity is your career, what if you are injured and you can't continue in that career anymore? Then who are you? If your identity is your relationships, then what if they all die? Who are you now? If your identity is your qualities, I'm helpful, and you're paralyzed and you can't help anyone now, then who are you now? If you have an identity that can be threatened, then you're in an insecure place. You can never be secure if your identity can be threatened. And if your identity is based upon any personal quality, any personal capacity, any human relationship, it can always be threatened. It can always be threatened. If your identity is based upon something that is mortal, something that is perishable, it can always be threatened. And that leaves you always insecure. Now, is it the thing that is created that defines what it is? Or is it the Creator that defines what it is? Is the pot a pot because a pot says I'm a pot? Or is a pot because the Creator says you're a pot? Is your identity defined by you, or is it defined by God? In 1 John 3 and verse 1, we're told, "Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called sons of God." So, what does God identify us as? His children. We are the children of God. And that's a beautiful thought. Now, you might have thought that you had parents, and you do. You do. And you have a family tree, of course. And that family tree is going to include your father. Who is your father? And who is your grandfather? And who is your great-grandfather? And who is your great-great-great-grandfather? And so on and so forth. How far does that family tree, where does it go to? Right? How far do those roots go? How far do the branches go? Who are you related to? Well, the Bible tells us. In Luke 3 and verse 38, it comes to the end of a chain of genealogies. So-and-so was the son of so-and-so, who was the son of so-and-so, who was the son of so-and-so, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. You and I trace our family tree and our genealogy to God Himself. God Himself. You do not come from a puddle. You do not come from a tadpole. You do not come from a bacterium or some protozoan. You do not come from a fish or anything of that nature. You come from the God of the universe, the creator of all that there is. And we're told, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." You are made in the image of God. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. We have some more to read. It says, when Adam came from the Creator's hand, he bore in his physical, mental, and spiritual nature a likeness to his Maker. God created man in his own image, and it was his purpose that the longer man lived and the more fully he should reveal this image, the more fully reflect the glory of the Creator. All his faculties were capable of development, and their capacity and vigor were continually to increase. Face-to-face, heart-to-heart communion with his Maker was his high privilege. Throughout eternal ages, he would have continued to gain new treasures of knowledge, to discover fresh springs of happiness, and to obtain clearer and yet clearer conceptions of the wisdom, the power, and the love of God. More and more fully would he have fulfilled the object of his creation, more and more fully have reflected the character's glory. So this was the purpose of God for us. The purpose of God for us was that we might become more and more like Him, reflect Him more and more, learn more and more, grow more and more. Is that how He created every creature? Well, no. We read, next to the angelic beings, the human family formed in the image of God are the noblest of His created works. Oh, next to who? Next to the angels. Next to the angels. Now, how did God create angels? Well, we're told this about the creation of angels. The greatest talents and the highest gifts that could be bestowed on a created being were given to Lucifer, the covering cherub. Before his fall, he was a glorious being occupying a position next to Christ. So as much as God could put into a creature at its creation, that's what He did for Lucifer. That's what He did for the angels. But there's something interesting about the angels, and that appears to be that the angels are static. They are what they are when they're created, and that's what they are. And we're told that before his fall, Lucifer was a covering cherub, distinguished by his excellence. God made him good and beautiful, as near as possible like himself. As near as possible like himself. Beautiful, wonderful, great, majestic, powerful, intelligent. That's how he was created. What about Adam and Eve? We're told Adam and Eve were visited by angels and were granted communion with their Maker, with no obscuring veil between. Their intellectual power was but little less than that of the angels. All right, so here we have mankind that's created, but mankind is created not quite as with the intellect as an angel, a little less than the intellect of angels, and a little bit less than angels. Humanity was created. Okay, all right. But what about mankind's creation was different than the angels? Well, we read here, God has made man capable of constant progress in mental and moral worth. No other creature of his hand is capable of such advancement. That means that God created us with the capacity to advance, to grow, to improve in moral nature and mental nature and so on. And not even the angels have that capacity. Humanity of all creation has the greatest capacity of anything in growth. We're also told that man created for fellowship with God can only in such fellowship find his real life and development. Except by his own choice, there is no limit to the possibilities of his development. No limit. Just sit and sit on that one for a little bit. Think about that one for a little bit. What does it mean, no limit? Now, I'm not trying to imply at all that we will ever become God. No, he is infinitely greater than we are. There's no way a human being is ever going to become God. I know there's certain thought processes in that direction with certain individuals and certain religions, but no, we will never become God. But as a created being, there is no limit to the possibilities of our development. What does that mean? Something to think about, right? We're told the Father consulted Jesus in regard to at once carrying out their purpose to make man to inhabit the earth. He would place man upon probation to test his loyalty before he could be rendered eternally secure. If he endured the test wherewith God saw fit to prove him, he should eventually be equal with the angels. Okay, so here we have Adam and Eve that are created a little lower than the angels, their intellect and all that kind of stuff. But now, at some point, mankind is going to become equal with the angels. Okay, so lower than the angels, infinite capacity to grow and increase, eventually equal with the angels. And let's go on reading. Those who in the strength of Christ overcome the great enemy of God and man will occupy a position in the heavenly courts above angels who have never fallen. So you have mankind below angels, you have mankind equal with angels, now you have mankind above the angels. We read still, the work of redemption involved consequences of which it is difficult for man to have any conception. There was to be imparted to the human being striving for conformity to the divine image and outlay of heaven's treasures, an excellence of power which would place him higher than the angels who had not fallen. So what is possible for us? Makes you think. Makes you think. One last quote here. By his life and his death, Christ has achieved even more than recovery from the ruin wrought through sin. It was Satan's purpose to bring about an eternal separation between God and man. But in Christ, we become more closely united to God than if we had never fallen. So God's plan to redeem us, the plan of salvation, is such a good plan that at the end of all of this, it will be better than it was at the beginning. And God created us with a capacity to grow and increase that no other creature of all creation has been given. How special are we? How precious are we? Far beyond what we can imagine. So, from what we have read, we see that mankind was made a little lower than the angels, that mankind has the greatest capacity of advancement of all created beings, that mankind will eventually be equal and then equal to and above the angels, and there is no limit to the possibilities of our development. Wow. Wow. Nothing else in all creation has the potential that you have as a human child of God. Nothing. Nothing. You are not a cosmic accident. You are not a random accumulation of molecules. You are not the result of a nameless and faceless process that has produced you but does not care about you. You are not a robot or a slave made to fulfill the needs of a selfish God. You are not lost in a crowd. What are you? You are royalty. You are a precious child of the Creator God, the God of the entire universe and beyond. You are unique. There is no one else like you, no one with your set of qualities, nothing. There is no one else that has the same personality, no one else that has the same individuality as you do, and no one else could ever replace you, and no one else could represent the particular aspects of the nature or the character of God like you can. No one else. And God created you so that you would continue to develop forever. You don't have a clue of what you will become. Not a clue. So the question is, how much are you worth? How much are you worth? First, we must ask the question, what makes something worth what it's worth? Is it what it is made of? Here we have a picture on the screen. And that picture, well, it's an old picture. It's not a very exciting picture. It has ink, has paper. Is it worth what it's worth because of the ink and the paper? And maybe the subject that's in there? Well, this happens to be the Honus Wagner baseball card. You might not be into baseball cards or not, but this is the most sought after baseball card in the world. And this particular baseball card sold for about $2.4 million. Subsequently, they found another one in better condition, and that one sold for around $5 million. So is it worth what it's worth because of what it's made of? Not really. Is it worth what it's worth because of what it can do? Here you see there's a vase. Now, the vase can hold water, a vase can hold marbles, a vase can hold flowers, a vase can hold various different things. It can sit on a shelf, it can keep a door open and keep it from swinging shut, it can be there to pick things up in and whatever. That's what a vase is. Is that what determines how much value it has? That one happens to be Ming Dynasty, $3.5 million. Really, when it comes down to it, value is determined by what the highest bidder is willing to pay for the thing. If you come up with a product or you have some kind of item and you want to find out what value it is, if you simply stick it on the shelf and you put it for sale and you put a price on it and it's purchased for that price, you still don't know what it's worth. It's worth at least the price tag that was on it, but you don't know if it's worth more than that. It's only when it goes up on auction you get to know how much it's worth based upon the highest bidder. So again, how much are you worth? How much are you worth? In answering that question, we're going to go on a journey together. A long journey, a big journey. So here is something. What is that? It's our Earth. And the Earth is big. That's actually quite big. It's around 25,000 miles in the circumference, 24,901 miles around its circumference. If you would to drive around the world, around the equator, and you were driving at 70 miles an hour without brakes, it would take you, how long? 355.7 hours to drive around the Earth. That would be 15 days plus something. And a straight drive around the Earth, no stops to fuel, no stops for bathroom, just 70 miles an hour going on around the Earth. That's pretty big. The Earth has a mass of essentially 6 octillion kilograms. Now, octillion, get an idea, is you have 100,000 and then a million and billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion. So 6 octillion kilograms. If you could bench press or you could lift 200 pounds or a little less than 100 kilograms, if you could do that once every second, it would take you at that rate 2 sextillion years to be able to lift the same amount of weight as the Earth is. Now, if you have a fast car, you might be able to drive 200 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. But the Earth rotates on its axis about 1,000 miles an hour. That's quite faster. And the Earth's orbit around the Sun is 66,611 miles an hour. So if you aim things just right and you're driving your 200 miles an hour in the direction that the Earth is turning, in the direction that the Earth is orbiting, then, well, it looks like you could hit about 67,811 miles an hour. That's kind of fast, huh? Doesn't seem like we're going that fast. I mean, right now, you're going almost 70,000 miles an hour, but it seems like you're going nowhere. Perspective. Of course, the Earth is only one of 8 or 9 planets in our solar system. You have Mercury, which is the one that is closest to the Sun. And then there is Venus and Earth and Mars. And then you have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And if you consider Pluto a planet, poor little Pluto out there. And all of those are orbiting around the Sun. Our Sun is a medium-sized star. It's about 93 million miles away from us. And even at the immense speeds of light, it takes about 8.25 minutes for light to make it from the Sun to the Earth. So if the Sun were to explode, well, we wouldn't know it for a little over 8 minutes later, and then we still wouldn't know it because we'd be dead. On its surface, the Sun is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And if the Earth were the size of a golf ball, the Sun would have a diameter of about 15 feet across. That would be pretty big. Here you got a little example in the picture. And there's your little dot, what the Earth would look like in comparison to the Sun. You could fit 960,000 Earths inside of the Sun. That is enough golf balls to fill an entire school bus with Earths. When we compare the Earth with the other planets, we find that the slightly larger planets, there are some that are smaller. Mercury's smaller, Mars is smaller, Venus is a little bit smaller, and then you have the Earth. But the Earth is quite small compared to some of the other ones. You see the Earth compared to Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and then Jupiter. In fact, Jupiter is so big you can take 2 Earths and put it inside of this big hurricane on the surface of Jupiter. So Jupiter is a big planet, but Jupiter is nothing. You see Jupiter on the left? There's a little dwarf star, and then there's our sun. So you get to see how big our sun is compared to Jupiter and how big it would have been compared to the Earth. But the sun is not very big compared to Sirius. Sirius is seriously big. But Sirius, well, Sirius is seriously small compared to Pollux, Arcturus, and Aldebaran. And Aldebaran seems to be so huge, but here's Aldebaran compared to Rigel, Antares, and Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is huge, absolutely huge. Betelgeuse is called the Orange Giant. It's part of the Orion constellation. In fact, it forms one of Orion's shoulders. And it is 427 light years away from us, which is twice the size of the Earth's orbit around the sun. So you take Earth orbiting around the sun, and you take that next to Earth's orbiting around the sun, and both of those can fit inside of Betelgeuse. It is absolutely huge, an absolutely huge star. If the Earth were the size of a golf ball, then Betelgeuse would be the size of the Empire State Building, on top 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 of the Empire State Building. 6 Empire State Buildings on top of each other. That would be the Earth. It would be 612 stories tall, and the Earth would be a golf ball. And of course, it's that much around as well because it's a sphere, and you could fit 262 trillion Earths inside of Betelgeuse. That's enough golf balls to fill the Superdome in Louisiana 3,000 times. It's huge. It's huge. But Betelgeuse is not the biggest star out there. You see Betelgeuse on the left? Well, next to it is Musifi. Musifi is so big, it's 3,000 light years away from us, and it's so big that if the Earth were the size of a golf ball, Musifi would be the size of the Golden Gate Bridge next to the Golden Gate Bridge, and Musifi would be bigger than that. 2.4 miles in diameter. And you could fit 2.7 quadrillion Earths inside of Musifi. Now, what does that look like? What is 2.7 quadrillion? How do you understand quadrillion? Well, let's just consider it in terms of time. And let's take seconds as our unit of measure. So 1 million seconds ago was 11.5 days ago. 1 billion seconds ago was about 32 years ago. 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688,000 years ago, and 1 quadrillion seconds ago was 31,688,088 years ago. So a quadrillion is a ridiculously large number, and you could fit 2.7 quadrillion Earths inside of Musifi. But clearly, as you saw in the picture, Musifi was not the biggest star. Until recently, the biggest star we knew of was VY Canis Majoris. And VY Canis Majoris is the big dog. If the Earth were the size of a golf ball, Canis Majoris would be Mount Everest from sea level to tippy top, 5.5 miles from sea level to mountain peak. That would be the size of Canis Majoris if the Earth were the size of a golf ball. You could fit 7 quadrillion Earths inside of Canis Majoris. Absolutely huge. When you look out in the sky in the dark, and you don't have this, the lights of the city around you, it's you get to see all these little dots, these little stars. But if you're out there with a telescope, and you're looking through the telescope, and you get a powerful telescope, and a more powerful telescope, and a more powerful telescope, you recognize that some of those dots are not just dots. They are galaxies. Galaxies that have anywhere from 10 million to 100 trillion stars in a single galaxy. And if we had more and more powerful telescopes, like the Webb telescope that we have now, we would probably find much, much more than we now know. Now, the average distance between stars in our galaxy, we're in the Milky Way galaxy, and in our galaxy, the average distance between stars is 4.3 light years. Now, a light year is the distance that light will travel in a vacuum in a Julian year, and a Julian year is 365.25 days. It takes into account leap year and so on. And that distance that light would travel would be 5,878,625,000,000 miles. It's a pretty long distance, and so it's easier for us to talk in terms of light years. The stars that are closest to us make up the Milky Way galaxy, which is our galaxy, and the Milky Way galaxy contains approximately 300 billion stars. Estimates are between 200 and 400 billion. And the galaxy, in a short distance across the disk, is about 10,000 light years, and across the long part of the disk is about 100,000 light years. That would be 588 quadrillion miles. It's a long distance. The largest galaxy that we know of is the Abell 2029 cluster, and it contains approximately 100 trillion stars in that one galaxy. There are approximately 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe, at least so far. And it is estimated that the entire known universe is 91 billion light years across, which is 547 sextillion miles. And so that's how long it is, the distance that it is across. It's just amazing, the distance that it is across. Now, that's with what we have known so far. Webb telescope is showing us more. There are, again, an estimated 200 billion galaxies in our universe and 1 septillion stars. 1 septillion stars in the observable universe. So what is a septillion? Well, to get an idea of a septillion, we're going to go to the beach. We'll go to the closest beach to us, and we're going to take with us a fine pair of tweezers and a big bag. And we're going to go and we're going to pick up a piece of sand and we're going to put it in the bag, and then we're going to count 1. We're going to take another piece of sand and put it in the bag and count 2, and another piece of sand and put it in the bag and count 3 and 4 and 5 and so on and so forth. And we're going to continue doing that. We're going to continue picking up pieces of sand and putting them into the bag, and we're going to do so until there's no more beach. And we move from that beach to, let's say, north of where we are, and then continue going from there. And, well, let me use an example in the United States. So we're going to start, let's say, well, since we live in Missouri, we'll just go straight down from here and we'll go to Texas, near Houston. And we'll start in the beach there near south of Houston, and we'll start on the beach in Texas, and then we'll take up all the beach in Louisiana, and then the beach in Mississippi, and the beach in Alabama, and the beach of Florida. And then we're going to go all the way around the Florida Panhandle and make sure you get the Keys. And then you go up the eastern seaboard of Florida, and then you'll hit Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina, and keep working your way up the eastern seaboard all the way around Canada and everything, and then make sure that you get Greenland and Iceland, and then you get the European sea coast, the seaboard, and then you work around your western side of Africa, the southern tip of Africa, Madagascar, the eastern side of Africa, and then you hit India, and then you catch all of the South Pacific islands, and you get Australia and New Zealand, and you work your way across Russia, and you work your way across then Alaska and Canada and the western seaboard seaboard of the United States, and then Mexico, and Central America, and South America, and then around South America, and then Central America, and then Texas, and then you come back to where you began. That's got to be a big bag, right? It's got to be a big bag in order for you to do that. And when you get done with that, now you're going to take your tweezers and your bag, and you're going to go to all the deserts of the world. And when you get done with all the pieces of sand, you will have approximately a septillion pieces of sand. And that's how many stars are in the observable universe. It's amazing. And what are we told about these stars? We're told, blessing, I will bless you. And multiplying, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is on the seashore. This is a promise that God gave to Abraham, a promise of his inheritance that he would have later on. It's an incredible promise when we start actually considering numbers associated with these things. Now, God is not just a God of size, but he's a God of power. His creation is powerful as well. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped a nuclear bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. That nuclear bomb released an estimated 6 times 10 to the 13th joules of energy. And such a devastating explosion is nothing, however, compared to the sun. The sun releases about 4 times 10 to the 26 joules of energy every second. That is 6 1/3 trillion times the nuclear bomb, the Hiroshima nuclear bomb, every second. That is incredible power. Incredible power. But our sun is not the most powerful thing out there. When it comes to the release of energy, the most powerful thing we know of are quasars. And quasars can release 5 trillion times the power of the sun every second. And where do stars and quasars get their power? Well, we're told in Psalm 33 and verse 6, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. All of that power is as easy to God as breathing. It's as easy to him as breathing. And for all the things that he created and all the power that is required, he can continue to empower all of his creation forever. Easy for him. Now, God is not only in numbers, God is not only in power, but God is also in dimensions. You see, one dimension is a line. That's what it is. And with that line, you can go, let's say that it's an east-west line, you can go infinitely in the east direction, or you can go infinitely in the west direction. You have infinity even in a single dimension. But beyond that single dimension, what if you have 2 dimensions? Well, if you have 2 dimensions, now you take not only east and west, but now you can add north and south to it. Okay? And so you have infinity times infinity. You take this line here, and now you can turn around an axis, and you have an infinite number of other lines that you can draw, and now you end up with a plane. It's infinity times infinity. That's 2 dimensions. What about 3 dimensions? Well, 3 dimensions, you have east and west, north and south, but you also now have up and down. So you've taken your plane, and you have an axis, and well, it's probably easier to do it this way, and you take the axis, and then you just rotate that whole plane around and so on, and you have an infinite number of opportunities there, or directions that you can go. So now you have infinity times infinity times infinity. So 1 dimension, infinity, 2 dimensions, infinity times infinity, 3 dimensions, infinity times infinity times infinity, 4 dimensions. As 3-dimensional creatures, we can't comprehend what that is. But mathematically, it would turn out to be infinity times infinity times infinity times infinity. And the question that we can ask ourselves, how many dimensions does God exist in? I would propose that it's infinity to the infinitieth power. My guess is there's probably an infinite number of dimensions, and God exists in all of those. And here we are in 3 dimensions and 3-dimensional creatures trying to use our little minds to comprehend all of God and who he is and what he's like. Sorry, not going to work. Now, we can comprehend what he reveals about himself to us, and he must reveal what he reveals about himself to us in a way that we can comprehend. Otherwise, no point. But there is an infinity beyond what he has revealed to us about himself that you and I could never and will never comprehend about God. Sometimes I equate it to the bacteria. How well does a bacteria know who you are and what you're like? Right? Well, with its little bacteria capacities, if you have a bacteria growing on your skin, well, that's all it knows. But if you had an infinity of time, and a bacteria didn't die, and it could go around, and it could live on your skin, and then it could live on your teeth, and then it could live in your nose, and it could live in your respiratory tract, and live in your digestive tract, and live wherever, it might get a little bit better idea of who you are and what you're like, but still only to a bacterial capacity, and it wouldn't still have a very limited capacity to understand you. That's like us trying to understand God. But he does reveal himself to us in ways that we can comprehend and understand. So, what about God? Well, God is in heaven. And in heaven there is all praise, and there is all honor, there's all glory, there's angelic choirs, there's perfect harmony, perfect order, everything's beautiful, things function the way that they're supposed to. It's wonderful. And there God is in heaven, and he has all this, praise and adoration and so on. Of course, he doesn't take it for himself. He knows that they need the praise and they need the adoration, and so they do. And one day, off in infinite dimensions, let's go to 3-dimensional space. And now you go to 3-dimensional space with septillion plus stars and 200 billion galaxies. And you go flying through all of this darkness with little dots of light, and you go and you look for a particular dot of light, and you go zooming up to that, and you go up closer and closer, and then it turns into a disk, and you notice that it's a galaxy, and you look for 3/5 of the way out, you're looking for a particular star out of those 200 to 400 billion stars that make up that galaxy, and you find the right light, the right dot of light, and you go towards it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the closer you get, you notice that there's a few planets that are floating around it, and you find the 3rd planet from the sun, and it has blue and green and white and so on, and you go zooming in closer and closer and closer to it, and then on that planet you notice that there's 2 little dots, and you go zooming in closer and closer and closer, and it's Adam and Eve. And those 2 little dots on a dot next to a sand, a grain of sand in all the seashores of the world, they rebel. They disobey. They go another way. How easy would it be for God to go, boom, gone. 2 little people on the planet, gone. Or boom, gone. The whole Earth, gone. What is that? That's only, there's still another 7 or 8 planets floating around the sun. Or what about the whole solar system gone? What is that? I mean, it's only one of billions of stars within this galaxy. Or the whole galaxy, boom, it's only one of billions of galaxies in 3-dimensional space. And well, how about all of 3-dimensional space? Gone. There's infinite dimensions. How easy would it be for God, boom, gone. But that's not what God did. That's not what God did. God made an interesting choice. And he decided that he was going to become a dot on this little dot of a planet next to the sun, which is just one piece of sand in all of the beaches of the world And he came to Mary, the angel did, and asked her whether she would be willing, and she said yes. And God did something remarkable. He packaged himself in a single cell. The most simple of anything. The most simple form of life ever. The most vulnerable form of life ever. God packaged himself in that. And that one cell divided into 2 and divided into 4 and divided into 8, and then it was a morula and a blastula and eventually became a little embryo and then developed into a fetus, and then he had a heart that started beating and blood that started circulating, and he started having arm buds and leg buds and then hand buds and feet buds and then fingers, and then the fingers zippered and he had individual fingers, and he sucked his thumb inside his mother's womb, and he was completely vulnerable. God did that. And he was born into a world where he was born not into a palace, but into a cattle stall. And a feeding trough was his cradle. And he came so that he might rescue people. He came so that he might reveal to us his love. He came so that he might reveal to us the Father's love to set us free. And that love was too much. It was too much for us to handle. And we tried to throw him over the cliff. We tried to kill him. And we finally succeeded. We put him on trial. And we beat him. And he went through the most immense physical torture that anybody could imagine. And he died on a cross. For you. And for me. Why, oh, why would he do it? Because he knows how much we're worth. And he knows what he came to save. How much are you worth? Priceless. Absolutely priceless. We're told the value of a soul is estimated by the price paid for it. The value of a soul, who can estimate? Would you know its worth? Go to Gethsemane and there watch with Christ. Through those hours of anguish, when he sweat, as it were, great drops of blood, look upon the Savior uplifted on the cross. Hear that despairing cry, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Look upon the wounded head, the pierced side, the marred feet. Remember that Christ risked all. For our redemption, heaven itself was imperiled. At the foot of the cross, remembering that for one sinner Christ would have laid down his life, you may estimate the value of a soul. One soul is of such value that in comparison with it, worlds sink into insignificance. How much are you worth? Far more than you think. Far more than you imagine. Worlds. And I would argue, not just worlds, galaxies. How much are you worth? You don't know. But it is far more than you ever thought and you ever imagined. Far more. Right? You just can't imagine what you are worth. How do you treat something that is valuable? Here we have 2 vases. You have a vase that was on clearance sale for less than $1. And here you have a Ming Dynasty vase, $3.5 million. Both of them are vases. Both of them can have the same function. Both of them can hold water, can hold dirt, can hold plants, can hold flowers, can hold whatever. They can sit on a shelf. They can be looked at. They can be whatever. Both of them have essentially the same function, but they don't have the same value. So how do you treat something that's valuable? Would you put flowers and water in your Ming Dynasty vase and then leave them there and let them die and rot in there? And if your Ming Dynasty vase now had those flowers in it, would you pull them out and now it has muck on the inside of it, and you would go take it and get a Brillo brush and scrub it really good on the inside and so on, and then stick it on the drying rack or throw it in the dishwasher? Would you take your Ming Dynasty vase and do some balancing acts with it on your head and see if you can get it across from one side of the room to another? And if it fell and it crashed and it landed on the ground and shattered into 1,000 pieces, well, how would you feel and why? I tell you, if it was the $1 vase, and it fell to the ground and it broke into 1,000 pieces, you would be upset because you have a mess to clean up. But if the Ming Dynasty vase fell on the ground and crashed and split into 1,000 pieces, you would be upset, not because of the mess that you had to clean up, but because the value of what you had lost. Right? So, how do you treat something that is valuable? Do you just put anything into it? You just take any substance that makes you feel any way and put it into you? If you know your value, that is not the case. That is not the case. You will be careful about what goes into you, because you will only want something to go into you that is according to your value. Okay. So how do you treat something that's valuable? Do you just eat anything and everything? Oh, it may be tasty. Oh, it may be colorful. Oh, it may be this, that, or the other thing. But do you just put anything into you if you are so valuable? No. I tell you, the ones who eat like this are the ones who don't know who they are. They don't know how valuable they are. They don't know how precious they are. And so since you're not valuable and you're not precious, you can just put anything into you that you want. How do you treat something valuable? Do you just put anything and everything into such a valuable mind that was created in the image of God, that was created to expand and grow forever and to become more and more like God? Do you fill it with things that draw you away from God, separate you from Him, and so on? No. If you know who you are and you know how valuable you are, you don't just put anything into your mind because it's precious. It's valuable. It's His. How do you treat something that's valuable? Do you just cover it up? Paint it up? Tattoo it up? Or whatever? Is that how you treat something that's valuable? No, friends. That's not how you treat something that's valuable. When I look at these people, well, her and him, I know they don't know who they are. They don't know how precious they are. They don't know how valuable they are. And if they only knew, they wouldn't continue going there in the same way. Now, do we blame them for being that way? No, no, no. It's not to blame. It's not to blame. But it's to help us to recognize that we are of value. And because we are of value, we cannot just put anything and everything into us. And we cannot just treat ourselves any old way. We will do so in a way that shows the value that we have. Now, is it only us that are that valuable? Is it only me or only you? Well, no. What about others? How do you treat something that's valuable? They might be homeless. They might be destitute. They might not have a penny to their name. But how valuable are they? How precious are they? How do you treat something that is valuable? When we understand how valuable we are to God, then we will understand how valuable others are, and we will begin to treat them with that value. If you are in communion with Christ, you will place His estimate upon every human being. You will feel for others the same deep love that Christ has felt for you. Then you will be able to win, not drive, to attract, not repulse, those for whom He has died. It is by this personal work that we can rescue souls. When you see those who are going down to death, you will not rest in quiet indifference and ease. The greater their sin and the deeper their misery, the more earnest and tender will be your efforts for their recovery. You will discover the need of those who are suffering, oppressed with a burden of guilt. Your heart will go out in sympathy for them, and you will reach out to them a helping hand. In the arms of faith and love, you will bring them to Christ. So, who are you? What are you worth? What are others worth? And what is a purpose worthy of your identity and your value? These are all things that we must question, that we must ask, and we must seek to understand. But I want to remind you that you are His, and you are absolutely valuable to Him.